Hello everyone, my name is Ian and you're watching Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and if you're new here and you like this kind of content, I hope you will consider subscribing. Now today I've got another installment in my first ride impressions series. So just a reminder, these videos are designed to go alongside and complement but not replace my in-depth motorcycle reviews. So in a couple weeks I'll be publishing a full in-depth review on the Street Triple, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So today I'm riding the 2024 Triumph Street Triple R. I'm here at SoCal Motorcycles in Brea, California, where Triumph manages their West Coast press fleet. Thank you so much for Triumph for your continued support. And today, ride along with me and find out a little bit more about this brand new model from Triumph. This is my first time getting on a bike and riding it, and I'm going to just share with you my experience of riding it for the first time. All right, here she is. So it's an early release 2024 model. So for the new model year, Triumph has almost completely redesigned the Street Triple. They've kept it kind of true to what the Street Triple has always been, which has been this kind of perfect middle ground, middleweight street fighter naked motorcycle that's gotten so much acclaim over the years ever since it was released. So they've restyled the bike. They has a new chassis, different frame, different suspension, updated electronics. So now you have a standard 6-axis IMU, or inertial measurement unit, which gives you cornering ABS and cornering traction control, which is a huge improvement over the previous year's model. You can see new styling, new fuel tank. It's really a completely reworked bike. It's not just a little refresh or something. It's a completely new motorcycle for the most part. Now, the Street Triple for 2024 comes in 3 different flavors. You've got the base R model, which is this version here, which comes in at $9,995. You've got Showa suspension that's still fully adjustable. And then if you want to go up to the RS is going to be coming in more around that $12,000 mark, and that's going to give you things like updated brakes, upgraded suspension to Olin suspension, a little bit updated electronics, and a bump in power. So speaking of power, the R model puts out around 120 horsepower. It's a high revving little 3-cylinder engine. You get a bump to about 128 horsepower if you go to the RS model. They also have something called the Moto 2 edition, which is a limited production, higher spec model even compared to the RS. But I think for most people, they're going to be looking at the R model because it's coming in under that $10,000 price point. For last year's model, the R came in at around just under $11,000. It's pretty astonishing that Triumph was able to reduce the price by $1,000 and improve the motorcycle and modernize the motorcycle, give us more content, and actually reduce the price by about 10%. That's astonishing, and I think we really should be giving some applause to Triumph for doing something like that, because usually when manufacturers redo their bike, they increase the price. So the specs on this bike, you've got about 120 horsepower in the R version, about 128 if you go up to the RS or the Moto 2, 59 foot-pounds of torque. She weighs about 417 pounds, fully fueled up with a full tank of gas. The gas tank is now smaller for this year. It's 4 gallons or 15 liters. I think last year was about half a gallon bigger, about 4.6 gallons. You have a 32.5-inch or about 825 millimeter seat height. And I mentioned all the upgrades. Taking a walk around the bike, you can see the classic low-slung exhaust there, nice sporty looking wheels and tires, famous 3-cylinder engine. You've got the distinctive, Triumph front end here with these kind of bug-eye headlights. Incandescent turn signals. I would have liked to see LED turn signals, but again, they did reduce the price on the bike. Continental tires. You can see the seating set up here. It's an aggressive seating position. A little bit more so than something like on a Yamaha MT-09, which I personally own. So let's take a look at the dash and controls. Got the fuel tank here in front of you. You've got a 4-way controller. Riding mode button. The bike does have riding modes. You've got hazard lights over here, start stop switch. The dashboard setup, so this is one of the ways they're saving a little bit of money. You've got this LCD setup. If you go to the RS model, you're getting a full TFT display. So this is real similar to the display I've seen on the Tiger 660 Sport, which I've also reviewed. And it's okay, it's just not my favorite, but it does the job and it works just fine. Then you have another panel down here with some more information that you can scroll through. So we've got things like trip computer, fuel mileage, coolant temperature, service information, brightness. Pretty easy to navigate all this stuff. Trip 1, trip 2. All right. Okay, let's ride a Triumph Street Triple. So I'm leaving here from the dealer, SoCal Motorcycles in Brea, and riding towards my house. So we'll do some freeway, we'll get some twisty roads near the end, and then we'll wrap this up. So firing up the bike, you can hear a pretty aggressive sounding, raspy Triumph 3-cylinder engine, which is kind of their hallmark at this point. Definitely sounds pretty sporty. Now, one of the first things I noticed jumping on this Street Triple, so I recently purchased a Yamaha MT-09, and the riding position on this bike feels much more like a sport bike compared to something like my MT-09. That's for sure. It's a much more aggressive, sporty setup. I have a lot less leg room. I'm leaned quite a bit more forwards. This is getting pretty aggressive for a bike you're gonna do any sort of longer miles on, but it's not a touring bike. I can already see how much fun this bike is going to be to ride. All right, I got to pay attention to my phone here because I don't know my way around this neighborhood very well. So around town, you know, these are really good. This is a good category of bike for around town. I mean, it's obviously way more power than you need for this, but hey, why not if you can afford it? I just love the way these 3-cylinders sound. They're so nice. So when I'm looking ahead at the road, I can't really see the dash. Everything down here, it's like I'm sitting up on top of the bike and I have to really look down to get to the dashboard. That's kind of the experience of riding it, more like you would on a sport bike. I mean, I'm not going fast, but the brakes, the initial impression of the brakes and chassis and everything feel just fine. I love 3-cylinder engines. It's one of the reasons I bought my MT-09. But the Triumph 3-cylinder engine is just set up a little different. And it has a bit of a different sound to it. It just sounds like you're going racing, you know, even when you're just riding around town. I love that. Yeah, the riding position is going to take some getting used to. I'm not used to being kind of this squashed into a bike. It's not super aggressive like a full-on race bike or sport bike, but it is a bit more aggressive than some of the options out there. But I think Triumph has been very intentional about that. This is more of a sport-focused, aggressive-focused, you know, motorcycle than some of the competition, and you lose a little bit of that relaxed riding position when you have that. This dashboard is not as bad as I thought. It's fine. It looks a little bit low budget, but honestly, because, you know, it kind of is. The quick shifter the quick shifter is really nice and smooth on this bike. Every bit as smooth as my MT-09. I would say the on-off throttle fueling, I'm just in the standard mode, I think, right? No, I'm in sport mode, rain, road mode. There we go. Man, I don't know, this, you can tell it has less torque than like a KTM 890 Duke or an MT-09, but it doesn't feel that far off. And you can feel there's more top-end power. This bike revs out pretty far. Oh, yeah. These things are just... they're some of the best motorcycles out there. They really, really are. So you might be asking, why did I not buy the Street Triple? Why did I buy the MT-09 SP? So I'm doing a bunch of videos kind of on the MT-09 SP coming up soon, if they're not already coming out by the time I release this. But when I bought my MT-09, actually this bike was not out yet. So I knew that it was coming, but it wasn't available yet. And I wanted to get something at that time. Also, the appealing things to me about the Yamaha was this larger engine, more torque, And for that price, for $11,500 on my SP, I got Olin suspension, I got cruise control, which you can't get on this bike at all, which was important to me. And I just like Yamaha. Like, you're just never going to have any drama with them. Not that Triumph is unreliable. They're actually very reliable in my opinion. But those were some of the reasons. But I think if this bike had been out when I got my Yamaha, it would have been a tough choice. I probably would have gone up to the RS version, which is actually more than my MT-09 SP cost, but I don't know, I just like the styling a lot better on the Triumph than the Yamaha. And the fueling, I was starting to talk about the on-off throttle. On my Yamaha, it's really jerky and really glitchy, and it's my biggest complaint with the MT-09. On this bike, I don't feel that at all. I mean, I need more time to evaluate it, but I don't feel that whatsoever. I mean, I could definitely feel less mid-range pull than I do on the MT-09, but that makes sense. That bike has a larger engine. All right, so first impressions of the Street Triple 765R on the freeway. So in Southern California, you know, the traffic moves between 70 to 90 miles per hour typically. We also have these concrete freeways with these rain grooves cut in so that you don't slip in the rain, and can make some bikes wander around. It doesn't do that on this bike. It just tends to be a problem on the adventure bikes. So how's the Street Triple on the freeway? If you're going to do this higher speed riding or maybe commuting on the freeway every day, it's okay. You don't have any wind protection obviously on a bike like this, but because you're leaned forward pretty far, you're braced against the wind. That's what some people don't understand. Like, part of the reason that motorcycles like this have a forward lean is not just to get weight and pressure into the front tire for cornering and riding aggressively and stuff, but also it braces you against the wind so you don't feel like you're being ripped off the bike. So riding position is okay. My legs, I don't have a lot of leg room, and we've kind of talked about that. The leg room is a little bit cramped, so if you're going to do a lot of miles on your bike, a lot of touring, or things like that, then get a bike that's more suited for that. Get a Tiger, or get a Yamaha Tracer, or get an adventure bike, something that's more upright. These bikes look cool and they're sporty and they're good to ride in the canyons, but as an everyday commuter, there are bikes that are more practical than this. This is essentially like a sport bike with the fairings stripped off, right? So you have that aggressive riding position. Now let's talk about the engine. So the engine does have, being a 3-cylinder engine, I love 3-cylinder engines, but one downside that they do have by design is they have vibration. The engineers, there's no way to completely tune out the vibration of a 3-cylinder engine because of the way the cylinders are moving relative to each other. So at about 80 miles an hour at 7,000 RPM, I do feel buzz coming through the handlebars. There definitely is quite a bit of buzz coming through the bars. This is true of every 3-cylinder engine that I've ever ridden, whether it's a Tiger 1200, a Tiger 900, the old Triumph 3-cylinders, the 800s, the Tiger 660 is probably the worst that I've had on that bike. They have a vibration. You can feel it mostly through the handlebars, but also through the foot pegs. So it's something that you need to keep in mind. It's not terrible, it's not a deal breaker, but it is something that you need to be aware of. They have a little bit more vibration than a twin or even a 4-cylinder engine. Another thing you don't have obviously is cruise control. Triumph chose not to put cruise control on the bike. Most of the bikes in this category do not have cruise control. The BMW F900 does have it. My MT-09 SP does have it, and it was a feature that I have to have, so that's why I personally chose to go with the Yamaha. But that being said, I still love this Triumph. I'd still buy one of these Street Triples, but it would be nice if they consider cruise control at some point. The mirrors are pretty clear. They have a tiniest bit of buzz in them, but I can still see behind me, and I can tell whether it's a normal car behind me or a highway patrol cruiser, so that's a nice thing to be able to see what kind of car is behind you. So overall on the freeway, it's about what you would expect for a middleweight naked bike. There are better bikes to do this, but can you do this for a couple hours at a time? Yeah, of course you can. It's perfectly all right. Just don't expect it to be a Goldwing. All right, let's get the street triple on a twisty road. This is the part you've been waiting for, and frankly, this is the part I've been waiting for too. It's really what these bikes are designed for. Now, a couple things. I've been riding for a while now to get this bike, closer to my house from LA, and I am noticing that the leg room is pretty compromised. So my legs are getting a bit stiff, a bit uncomfortable after about an hour and a half of being on the bike. So if you're gonna do like 2 to 3 hour rides, I think you'll be okay. And it also depends on what kind of bike you're coming off, what you're used to. So anyway, let's go ahead. God, you just can't argue with the sound of these Triumph triples. Alright, so it's pretty phenomenal, as you would expect. This is what this bike is designed to do. And I'll tell you, I could just wind this thing out all day on roads like this. It's so good. The engine is so characterful, has such a good linear power. You can rev it out. You do feel kind of that grittiness in the engine above at the higher RPMs for sure. But the quick shifter works well. The chassis feels really good. And this is where that forward riding position really comes into its own, because you've got more weight and more pressure into the front tire. You're leaned forward on a bike. You're in that more aggressive position. So for aggressive riding in the canyons and twisty roads or on the track, that's where a bike like this really comes into its own versus more of an upright standard bike or something like that. This Tesla's actually being driven fairly well. I normally see people go really slow on this road, but this guy at least has some idea how to drive. Teslas are actually very good on a twisty road. They're very good sports sedans if you know how to drive them. So the brakes and suspension, so keep in mind, this is the budget oriented model. This is the R model. It comes in under $10,000, so you're not getting the up-spec Olin suspension and stuff like that super dialed in. It's more of a budget setup. But that being said, for almost, for 80% or 90% of riders who are going to buy this bike, this model is enough. The suspension is not bad, it's just not top shelf. The brakes are not bad, they're just not top shelf. You have everything you need. It's okay. And you do have adjustments on the suspension. Where you feel some of the budget part of the suspension is maybe it's a little bumpier, maybe there's a little bit more brake dive in the initial travel. It feels a little spongy. The damping isn't as well controlled. But unless you're a professional rider or an A-level track rider or somebody like that, unless you're in that category, which is probably 5 or 10% of riders, I don't see how you wouldn't be happy with the equipment you get on the R model. This bike still has more capability than almost any other riders who are going to buy it, and I'm not trying to be offensive or anything like that, but that's just the way it is. Now, while we're stuck behind this Tesla, we could talk a little bit about pricing. I really have a pet peeve. A lot of people have said that, oh, motorcycles have just gotten too expensive, too fancy, too many electronics. I completely disagree in every possible way, and I disagree strongly. Here's what I mean. This bike, $99.95 for this motorcycle, is freaking phenomenal. What can you get for $10,000 these days, right? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, I have a mountain bike that cost $8,000, right? And I'm not trying to brag or be whatever, but I'm just saying $10,000 is not a lot for a motorcycle. You're getting a 6-axis IMU, you're getting lean sensitive ABS and traction control, so if I want to, I can slam on the brakes in the middle of the corner like this and the bike saves my ass from crashing. You have adjustable settings. You've got a phenomenal engine. phenomenal brakes. I mean, everything for 10 grand. Come on. If anything, motorcycles have actually gotten more affordable and cheaper if you consider the performance that you're getting. They really, really have. You have to compare things in today's dollars to what they used to be. This is way more bike for the money than you got 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. It just is a fact. I'm sorry. And the thing about the electronics, I mean, they make motorcycles so much better. They make them safer, more enjoyable to ride, and it just makes the sport better because you have, you know, potentially less people having accidents. And they benefit professional riders and more experienced riders, but they also benefit newer, more beginner riders as well. So things like ABS and traction control and the IMU sensors and all that, they're just a huge improvement. And I mean, consider that this bike got cheaper from last year's version. It got cheaper. How is that even possible? That's phenomenal. Truly phenomenal. The amount of fun I'm having here for $10,000, the amount of ability this bike has is sensational for the money. Okay, soapbox over about the price. All right, so I want to wrap up this first ride review. Make sure you stay tuned and are subscribed to get the full in-depth review coming out in a couple weeks. But I just want to leave you with just another minute or so of just fabulous sport riding on the street triple. It's just one of the best things in life, a mountain road and a tram street triple.